All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's Friday, the free for all. Looking forward to talking to you for an hour or so, and hope you will actually talk to me by calling in 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Yeah, this is about a dialogue. We're trying to solve problems. And there are a lot of them to solve. There sure as heck are. And I just think the partisanship, I used to be such a loyal Democrat, and I never could understand how could anyone vote Republican. I think that viewpoint was pretty justified. It really was. I mean, at the time of Reagan, up until maybe Clinton, I don't know, you could just really look at the Democrats and say they're better. They're just clearly, but even now when I look back, in retrospect, no, maybe not. I mean, I think most Democrats, if I'm right, voted for the Reagan tax cut. So they already were pretty darn corrupt. Yeah, but I think you could make an argument, a better argument then, that the Democrats were clearly superior. I don't know if you can make that argument today in a persuasive, powerful way. I certainly don't believe that. And I think when we get into this partisanship, which has been so toxic, the toxic nature of our political system, where the team red is just evil. If you're on team red, you're evil, rather than trying to understand and acknowledge that we have many common interests with those on the other side of the political aisle, those who vote, right? Not the political class, the elites. The electeds, their interests are so divergent. Both parties, right? Well, it doesn't matter, Republican or Democratic electeds, their interests tend to align, and they tend to align against those of poor, struggling, and working Americans invariably. So what we really need to do is figure out a way to unify across the aisle with those who share our similar economic views, our similar economic interests. And, technically people would say, well, Hal, you're a little better off than most people. You have a little more than most. So how do your interests align with mine? And I would say, well, maybe they don't, but what I call for, the solutions that I believe are best for our nation, I believe, I certainly make the argument, are best for poor, struggling, and working people, and are not best for economic elites, are not best for the rich, the powerful, even if in certain ways, but certainly I'm more fortunate financially than many. I thought I would point out that the hashtags for today's program, because I think they really go to where the Democratic Party has completely failed us. So putting aside the Halitics, well, of course I want you to be a fan of Halitics, a supporter of Halitics, but the Free Palestine and Medicare for All. If the Democratic Party were supportive of Palestine, of justice for all who live in that area, right, the southeastern corner of the Mediterranean, then I think they'd be in power right now. And certainly if they champion Medicare for all, if Barack Obama had gone to the mat for Medicare for all, now I know it would have been really, really tough because of Joe Lieberman and other Democrats who just simply were not prepared to embrace government health care. It would have been tough for him to get, but there was a possible chance for doing it. He could have sat down with Pelosi, because she was for the public option, if you remember. There might have been a path forward, or if not a potential path for Medicare for all, if Obama had made the case, hey, this is what our party stands for, this is what I stand for, we're going to fight tooth and nail for this, and any Democrat who's against it, I'm going to campaign against. I'm going into Connecticut. I'm going to start right now, and I'm going to start, campaigning for promoting Ned Lamont to take on Joe Lieberman, and so that we can get health care for every single American. If we had done that, we might be in a different place than we are right now. Instead, we're where we are. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. I would love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. Yeah, the situation in Palestine, very dear to my heart. I just have tremendous sympathy for the victims of Israel imperialism and by America. It's so awful there. This is a movie. This is the movie that won Best Documentary. And I was thinking about going to see it. No Other Land. It's not, it's a little confusing because they don't have a distribution deal, but there are plenty of theaters that show it in my area. There's a number in the DC area. And that's kind of the future of cinema, right? Independent, because the big studios are not making money. These giant movies, they hope, the blockbusters, I guess a few of them put some money in their pocket, but Hollywood has really shrunk. There just isn't the dollars going into movies. So the small independent ones that don't have big marketing campaigns, but instead have word of mouth, they're the ones that are I think, the future for cinema. And, I don't really want to go see this movie, to be honest with you. I already know that I'm totally supportive of Palestinians. I'm totally against Israeli occupation. I'm totally against ethnic cleansing. I'm totally against apartheid. And Israel's for all of that. And I can imagine in my heart and in my mind just how awful life is like for the people. This is West Bank. This isn't even Gaza. Gaza is worse. And West Bank is really bad. Gaza is even worse. By the way, I hope you'll join me again, 240-242-5646. And also, subscribe. That's where I was going with that. Hope you will do click the bottom right of your screen, or just click the subscribe link. Makes a real big difference, obviously, to get this video and others like it out there and get this viewpoint, this perspective that isn't found nearly as prevalently as I would like. Because it's mine, but also because I do think we'd be in a better place if we could unite in support of pro-worker, pro-struggling American, pro-poor American policies. And we haven't done that. And here we're getting into a worse and worse place. This is the trailer here. Let's play it for No Other Land. And as always, Hollywood does a great job. Well, it's not. I guess it is Hollywood, although they haven't got a distribution deal. Very emotional, very powerful. I'm not really big on having my, I'm more about the intellectual stuff. Just what are the numbers? Show me some videos. The melodrama with the powerful music that gets louder and louder doesn't do a lot for me, but it may for you. Here we go.
1,000 Palestinians face one of the single biggest expulsion decisions since the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories began in 1967.
مسافر يطا هي المكان اللي كبرت فيه. بداية تصويري هي بداية نهاية.
أنا يوفال، كيفك؟
هو صحفي بده يكتب عن هذا المعادي ولا يهود؟ عالم كامل مبني على الفصل.
ممكن يكون أخوك أو صاحبك إجا وهدم بيه.
إيش ممكن نسوي يعني؟
He spent years documenting Israeli efforts to evict Palestinians living in Masafriyata.
So just to stop it right there, this is Israeli who went into Palestine just to see what life was like in the occupied area and to see what it was like for Palestinians with the Israeli settlements encroaching further and more on their land. The military, they're defending and working hand in glove with the colonists, the settlers from Israel, the Jews who were taking over what had been Palestinian region. So there's no place for Palestinians. You talk about a two-state solution. Well, Israel's not for a two-state solution because they want it all to be Israeli, all to be Jewish, and they're taking over this area. It's horrific. It's a reprise of what we saw in this in the United States when the European settlers, colonists, just moved in and cleared out the American Indians. There's no real difference that I can see, and it's just absolutely ugly, horrific. So the Israeli filmmaker went in there and he became friends with a Palestinian young man, and together they made this movie, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, No Other Land. You can hear that stirring music. That's where I kind of like, I don't know. I could do without the music because the story itself is so powerful and so horrible, what Israel has been doing, that I think the music kind of sort of detracts a little bit. We don't need it, but that's what Hollywood does. That's what filmmakers are taught to do. And he's saying, I'm there because he's asked. One of the soldiers says to him, what do you care? You're not Palestinian. You can come and go. You're not imprisoned in this, little village. You won't get shot if you walk out of your house at night. Your land isn't steadily being, peeled away from you. What do you care? And he says, well, it's being done in my name. And that's kind of why I think I'm so upset too. As a Jew, this is the Jewish state. And it's hard to imagine a worse crime against humanity than what they're committing right now. For decades, right? For 75 years, the Palestinian people have been steadily persecuted, and their rights have been taken away from them, and their ability to survive, to make a living, to enjoy the beauty that there is in this world has been taken away from them. They destroy us slowly. Are you not ashamed?
وثبات في الأرض. مسافة رياضة موجودة لسبب واحد. الناس بتوجد حياة لنفسها.
So, there it is. I mean, that's what our government is supporting, whether it's a Democratic Harris-Biden, Blinken administration, or whether it's a Trump administration, whether it's, Obama tried to stop them a little bit. He tried to stand in the Israeli way a little bit. I know Bill Clinton did. I don't know where Bush was on that, but none of them have taken on Israel. None of them have been willing to say no to Israel. And Bernie Sanders actually campaigned in 2016 kind of as a different kind of Democrat, a different kind of presidential candidate who was going to say no to AIPAC, who said no, just because Netanyahu wants it, that doesn't mean he gets it. And he was just attacked and lost in the end. Our current president, I have given him more praise, or certainly more, let's say, less negative commentary than just about anyone on the left. I mean, he's just been completely reviled and pilloried. This tweet is just absolutely it's horrific. It's as bad as anything Harris Biden ever did or said. It's just absolutely awful. So here's what Trump posted a couple of days ago. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose release. Now, when I first read this, I just want to be real clear. I read it and I thought the beginning of it, I was like, well, I was looking for, let me put it this way. I was looking for any way to make excuses for Trump. Like, well, he's really talking about Hamas. He's not talking about all the Palestinian people, but he is, and it's terrifying. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered. As I understand, they pretty much have now. There's maybe just a few alive. I'm not really sure what the hostage situation is. Apparently Hamas is saying, no, we don't even have any. It's time for stage 2. There may be some who aren't in Gaza. I'm not really clear on all of that, and I'm not going to give all the deets. But from what I understand, Hamas certainly takes the position, as do the Arab countries that are trying to help Saudi Arabia, maybe Egypt, that Hamas has done everything that they said they would do under the the negotiating terms, and it's Israel that's in complete violation. And they certainly are having cut off all aid, all support, all supplies have been cut off from Gaza now for 4 or 5 days. So Trump is threatening both Hamas, but also all Palestinians. Return all the bodies of the people you murder, or it's over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies. You're sick and twisted. I'm sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I've just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning for the leadership. Now it's time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. I understand that Hamas has even said, yeah, we'll drop out. We'll step back. Let the Palestinian Authority take over. Just stop the killing. Stop killing Palestinians, Israel, U.S., stop it. And then he goes on to say, Trump does, this is your last warning. It's chilling, it's terrifying. This is flat out Nazism, flat out Holocaust. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. And I obviously highlighted that. Make a smart decision, release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later, Trump. So, I mean, there's nothing worse than those words, except for the actual deed, right? Except for the actual bombs that fell 15, 16 months, the Boeing-made, the American-made, corporate-made bombs that, Blinken and Avril Haines and Biden and Harris all supported, right? I mean, they lined the pockets of the Wall Street weapons makers. There's nothing worse than those words, except the actual killing. And then Trump goes on to say, release all the hostages now, not later, or it's over for you. This is your last warning. So, what do you do? I mean, this is where we are as a country. We have two pro-genocide parties. We have leadership in two parties that are pro-genocide. Now, the thing that's so weird about Trump, that's so strange, that makes it so difficult for someone like me. It was pretty easy with Harris because you wanted to believe she would be good. You wanted to believe she was going to support poor, struggling, and working people. But she never gave you any light. It was just what you wanted. You wanted to believe there was light there, but there really wasn't. With Trump, it's kind of the opposite. All you want to, and often from his rhetoric, all you can think of is how awful Trump is, right? And so much, right? He did questions whether Obama's American. I mean, just kind of bizarre, irrational thinking almost, not cogent. And then you get a headline like this, and this is from yesterday. Breaking diplomacy, Israel furious over secret Trump-Hamas talks. So on the one hand, Trump tweets out absolute horrific threats to annihilate the Palestinian people. There's no other way to read that. It's all over for you. It's all over for you. You are dead. Those are his words. You are dead to the Palestinian people, if you don't release the hostages. But the Palestinian people don't control the hostages. We don't even know exactly where they are. I don't think Hamas knows where they are, to the extent that those who haven't been released. And Trump's like, yeah, you don't release them, you're dead. So the worst possible rhetoric. But then you get this from Jerusalem Feed, J Feed, breaking diplomacy, Israel furious over secret Trump-Hamas talks. So they're negotiating, which is exactly what they should be doing. They should be talking to Hamas. The threats should be towards Bibi. They should be towards Israel. You don't do what we're telling you. You don't move on to phase 2. Just like what Trump said to Zelensky, you gotta talk to Putin. This is awful. Your country's being destroyed. You gotta talk to Putin. You gotta work this out. Because Putin isn't hell-bent. I know some of you would say he is, but clearly he's not hell-bent on eradicating and annihilating Ukraine. And there's plenty that can be done to protect Ukraine. that's very different, obviously, from Israel, which occupies Gaza, occupies the West Bank, and is hell-bent on annihilating the Palestinian people, eradicating Palestine altogether. So Trump's threat should be directed at Israel, which is the power, not at Hamas, and not at the Palestinians, who are victims, totally, purely victims of Israel and the United States. But that said, as much as I could condemn Trump for that, and I do, then he's out there, he's got his guy Witkoff, and they actually are talking to Hamas, and they're like, well, what can we do? How can we resolve this? So that's good. I mean, there's no other way to characterize it. That's a good thing. That's the right thing. And Trump, it's kind of bold, right? I mean, no, according to JFeed, and I don't know anything about, if they're, how hard right they are, how the only sort of center left media in Israel of which I'm aware is Haaretz. And so JFeed wouldn't meet that definition. This is from JFeed. But according to JFeed, Israel's aware of a secret channel where Witkoff and other Trump officials, I don't think it is Witkoff, it's another representative, are talking to Hamas. I'm like, well, what can we do? How can we solve this problem? And according to a senior Israeli official, the existence of these talks is very problematic. So if Israel doesn't like it, that means it's good, first of all. Second of all, these direct discussions mark a stark departure from the decades-long policy of the United States, which has refused to engage with Hamas. Obviously, the wrong policy, a terrible policy, but it's a policy that's designed to, make it easier for Israel to just simply kill Palestinians. Oh, well, if they don't want to be killed, if they don't want the bombs dropped on their hospitals and schools, if they don't want us to shoot their children in the head and in the chest, then they've got to replace Hamas. That's the U.S. policy. And Trump's like, no, we're going to talk to him, which is really, really good. So I have to question, well, what's going on? Is he, is Trump, that is, is this a bipolar policy? My hope, as unrealistic as this might be, is that the threats against Hamas are sort of a sop to Bibi and a sop to the Israeli hard right, as the as Trump and the administration pursue some kind of long, ongoing ceasefire and ultimate peace. But that's a hope. There's not a lot behind that hope. Maybe we can, but if you want peace with Israel, if you want peace between Israel and the Palestinians, if you want the murders to end by Israel, then you have to threaten Israel. You don't threaten Hamas, you threaten Israel, and you mean it. We'll see what goes on. The situation is so bad in Gaza and in Palestine. And Americans know it. This is such an opportunity. This could have been. You have to say, obviously, the Democrats really don't want power, or they don't want power enough to do the right thing and to take on their patrons. Because it's clear that they could have won. Kamala could be president right now. Do I think she would be a good president? Not at all. Would I have optimism that she could handle the challenges that we face as a country? No. And I also would be very deeply concerned if she were president that the war with Russia could get far, far worse rather than it looks like maybe Trump will end it. But there's a lot of really awful things that Trump's doing too that Harris wouldn't be doing, destroying the federal government, taking away the ability of the government to help people, and ultimately slashing taxes on the wealthy and probably increasing the wealth gap and income gap. So it's a mixed bag. It's two really bad bags. It's not clear which bag would be worse, Harris or Trump. But regardless, I would have voted for Harris. Harris almost certainly would have won if she had simply made some meaningful statements about a policy change when it comes to Israel. If she had simply said, no, we are not going to support the Israeli genocide going forward, I believe she would be president. Polls suggest that. And if you read this story, this is from Haaretz yesterday, sympathy for Israelis among Americans is lowest in decades. Democrats especially, the Democratic voters especially, have experienced steady disillusionment with Israel's conduct. 20 million Americans supposedly stayed home who had voted for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. 20 million Americans who had voted perhaps against Trump in 2020 did not vote in 2024. And the primary reason given, because we don't like the support, the unwavering, ongoing support for Israel. We oppose that. We want that to stop. And for that reason, we aren't voting. We didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I actually fit in that category. I'm one of those 20 million. Although I didn't stay home, I voted for Jill Stein. But my vote was not for Kamala Harris because she made it clear over and over and over again that she supported the genocide. The gap between Democratic sympathies toward Palestine and Israel has reached unprecedented levels. 59% of Democrats, that's amazing. 59% of Democrats' sympathies now are with the Palestinian people. 21% with Israel. Just think about that. That's why Democrats lost. I mean, you can come up with lots of other reasons, right? There's, that's a huge reason. The Harris Walls ticket was on the wrong side. They were on the wrong side of this issue. I'm going to get to whether you can have any hope that this will change, that the Democrats will become good on this issue, or at least not quite as horrible as Trump. I mean, because look, I think I could make an argument. I don't know that I would believe it, but hey, Trump's better. Trump's less bad than Harris Biden, than Harris Walls. At least right now, when I say this every day, and I always fear the next day it won't be true, but at least right now, bombs aren't falling on Gaza. As far as I know, unless it just started up again, Israel is not bombing Gaza. So there's that. And then there's the fact that Trump administration is actually talking to Hamas. That's a good thing. And Trump is also talking to Iran, which is a good thing. So there's some areas, just as we said before the election, where Trump is less bad than Harris. The Democrats, if they want to regain power, they have to be able to figure out, and my answer to that is, we don't want them back in power. I don't want Democrats. I want a true progressive. I want a progressive party, not even a true, just progressives, period, end of story. Gazans, in response to Trump, we've lost everything. Go ahead, kill us. We're done. You've destroyed us, meaning you, the United States, have destroyed us. So the threat, hey, release the hostages or you're dead, we're like, well, we're living dead, right? We're living dead. This is from Al Jazeera. You can just see these folks with a horse going through the bombed out rubble. There's not even basic services. This country has been utterly, completely destroyed. which is, by the way, what the Democratic Party seems to want for Ukraine. Much of Ukraine looks like this, actually. Much of it has been gutted, but with the use of, well, by Russia, right? But much of Ukraine looks like this. U.S. military support for Ukraine has led to the almost complete destruction of much of eastern Ukraine. And that seems to be what Democrats want as well for Ukraine. So they're now the party of war. But Trump, to his complete discredit, isn't saying we've got to rebuild it. We've got to, my predecessor's policies were awful. We've got to change them. Now, maybe he feels he can't. I don't know. I don't want to defend him, but this is what we've done. We need to change. The Democrat Party, you're a Democrat, you tell your representative, you tell your local central committee, you tell anyone who's a Democrat, if you want to win elections, you have to stand with Gaza. You have to stand with Palestine, not with Israel. From the Al Jazeera network, and again, this is consistent with that movie that won the Academy Award, Best Documentary, No Other Land. Yasser al-Sharafa, 59-year-old man, 2 years younger than I am, said he ignored the threat. He doesn't care. Trump, you want to threaten us? Go ahead, threaten. I have nothing left to lose. I have a makeshift stand selling candy and snacks. I used to be a clothing merchant. I had a department store in Gaza City. Everything's gone. It's all destroyed. Trump or whoever, it makes no difference. Those who demonize Trump, who characterize Trump as the worst of the worst, have to reckon with the fact that the previous administration is what did that. Trump's threatening more. Nothing good about that. Trump's threatening more. But it's the previous administration that did that. All right, join me, 240-242-5646. Don't forget, if you haven't yet, please subscribe now. Let's see if we can, there it is, the little bell too. I'd love to have you be part of Halitics. And don't forget, join Halitics on Facebook as well. I showed you this yesterday. I want to get into just a little bit more because there's the idea, right, that if we just had the correct Democrats, the better Democrats. There's the bad Dems, and there's the corporate Dems, and then there's the AOCs. And if we just had the AOCs in power, everything would be okay. So there it is. We have to fight for working class Americans. And I agree with her. I think she's right there. But would she be a better Democrat if she was in power? Would she? There's zero reason to believe her, to believe she really, because she doesn't. Now, you have to go on faith. You have to say, well, okay, she's gone along to get along. She's never challenged really since she first took office in 2018, just for a few months. Since then, she's never taken on her party. She's actually caped for her party, for example, beating up on poor Jill Stein, rather than helping Stein launch a movement. Or build a movement, which is what what AOC should have done. So, people are saying, do you believe in her? She should be the new leader of the party. And do you believe in her? And I'm like, no, not even a little bit. So why don't I believe her? Why am I utterly opposed to her? This is from, just a few months ago, right? The DNC over the summer in the Windy City in Chicago. A party that wouldn't allow one Palestinian to speak. And here's what AOC had to say at that event.
In Kamala Harris, we have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class.
All right, so that, I'm going to just interrupt a few. This is obviously just tidbits, selections of her AOC speech. The fact that Harris comes from the middle class, I don't know why that means she's for the middle class. Clarence Thomas was poor. Is he for the poor? Has his as a Supreme Court justice, can you say his rulings show concern for the poor? Because I sure can't. Dr. Martin Luther King was actually elite. He was an elite African American. His father was a very prominent, and they were certainly middle class to upper middle class for African Americans. Obviously, black people in America were far, far worse off in general. But the King family was pretty well off, pretty comfortable. In fact, Dr. King was a college man, went to BU, Boston University. And is there ever been an American who fought harder for poor, struggling, and working people? He wasn't poor, struggling. He wasn't from that background. He was from the talented 10th. But he fought tooth and nail for poor people, regardless of their race. So this idea that because you're from a particular class, you're going to support that class, it doesn't really, hold in real life. The president who cared most, who did more, again, for poor, struggling, working people, you could say it's LBJ. He came from a pretty poor background in Texas. The other, FDR. And Teddy also. They fought against corporate elites, and they were from the corporate elite. So it's just make-weight argument by AOC. Oh, it's identity that matters, right? She's from the middle class, so she must be for the middle class. And we all know what a horse manure that is. But that was her first argument. That's what she led with, apparently.
She understands the urgency of rent checks and groceries and prescriptions.
I'm trying to understand why you would say that. She went to law school. She got a job with the San Francisco DA's office. She had good health care from the beginning. She had a steady paycheck. She had job security. That is Kamala Harris from day one of her career. And that was in the early 2000s. Even before then, right? Would have been in the 1990s. So where does this idea come from that Harris understands the trials and tribulations of working class and lower middle class Americans, of the economically precarious class? There's no evidence for that, and certainly not in her policies. But that's what AOC said. So why is this relevant? Because this is the person, AOC, this is the woman being held up as the future of the Democrats. Well, she's not the future, as we talked about yesterday. The future is Brad Schneider. The future is Third Way. The future is the new Democrat coalition. But even if the future were AOC, that would be a pretty dark, dismal future.
She is as committed to our reproductive and civil rights as she is to taking on corporate greed.
So there's no evidence that Kamala Harris has any commitment to taking on corporate greed. In fact, just the opposite. Her top advisor, Tony West, is the general counsel for Uber, right? That's her, brother-in-law or cousin or something? I'm not sure the relationship exactly, but there's a familial relation. Her brother-in-law, Tony West, her top campaign advisor, is the Uber general counsel. So where is this commitment to taking on corporate greed? There's none. There's none. Remember, she first said she was going to go after the price, the collusion among grocery stores to keep prices high. It wasn't even so much collusion, just you have an oligopoly. You just have a small number of big-time players, and they can set prices. It wasn't even so much they were calling each other up, and, Albertsons is calling, I don't know, what's another, Harris Teeter, and they're all agreeing, or Trader Joe's, let's keep we'll all set the price for eggs at this level. It wasn't even so much that. It's just that in a lot of areas and markets, you really have only one or two big groceries, and they can set prices on their own. The real solution to that would be to break them up, to have aggressive anti-monopoly, antitrust actions, which, to Biden's credit, he kind of did. I don't know. There was no promise by Harris said she was going to keep Lena Khan on as chair of the FTC. So AOC is lying. She's lying. She's saying, oh, she's as committed to our reproductive rights and civil rights as she is to our taking on corporate greed. Well, maybe she is. Maybe it's the same. She has no commitment to any of those as far as I could tell.
And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
Right, so that obviously was a complete load of crap. There was no tireless working to bring anybody home. What I find so upsetting about that, really, I mean, look, politicians lie all the time. That's what they do. What I find so upsetting is so many people actually still have faith in AOC, still trust AOC, still think she's somebody that is on their side. That's what bothers me so much, is that she can shovel that manure and people still on the left lap it up. And I know what they would say. Well, what is she supposed to do? It's her party. You know, here's what she's supposed to do. She's supposed to go out on TV and do her podcasts and her Instagrams, because obviously the party going to invite her, and say, vote for Jill Stein. That's what she's supposed to do. It's that simple. It really is. She has a power base. She would get reelected in Queens, almost certainly, if she did that. She had a number of voters in her district who voted for Trump and voted for her. So that's what she should do. You want to believe in her, you got to demand from her that she stand and fight for you. And nobody does. People won't. And this is what breaks my heart. Just like seeing, you know, I mean, in a different kind of way, what breaks my heart, seeing people being killed by Jews in Israel, by Israelis killing Palestinians, and nobody giving a damn, people defending it. Well, it's Hamas's fault. Well, it's Putin's fault that Ukraine is destroyed. Not, hey, maybe we should have tried to negotiate with them, you think? Maybe. So my answer is, I think we are the only hope, which means we have to abandon dams and United Screens. I talked about this yesterday. And clearly, when you watch that video clip of AOC that's aged like fine milk, you have to say, how could we possibly put our faith in that Democratic Party? How could we possibly think that she could lead the party into a better place? And there's a response, but you know, the answer is, well, it doesn't matter. And I'm somebody who has supported the Green Party and supports alternative parties. There's no way. It's not happening. No, we're not going to unite in support of an alternative, in support of something good, in support of something. And I don't understand that. I truly don't. I mean, I like to think I'm a smart person, although my chess rating belies that belief, that hope. But zero chance of that ever happening. None. Zip. None. So why? Why? We are facing existential crises. Why isn't there any chance that this could lead to a better place, lead us to a better place? I don't understand that. But this is where it's leading us. This is where your Democratic Party really is. Those who, and I'm going to a party tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of political talk. It's sort of a political party, actually, not like a party like the Democrat Party, but there'll be a lot of Democrats there. And I've heard, hey, Democrat Party gets it. They finally get it. They're going to get better. They're going to fight for working class people. And who are the biggest now coalition in the Democratic in the House? The New Democrat Coalition. And that's what they call themselves, not the Democratic, the New Democrat Coalition. And their lodestar, their poll star, rather, is Third Way. And their Third Way is charting the Democratic comeback. Not AOC, not Bernie, not Elizabeth Warren, not that she's anything special, none of them, not Rashida Tlaib, not Ilhan Omar, the third way, the Wall Street-backed third way, today's DLC, is who's leading or charting the Democratic comeback. The Democratic Party is a dead end. It is not in any way a reason for you to have optimism about our future, that they could possibly lead. The only optimism we can have is if we leave them, we abandon them, we move on. There can be no doubt. I looked at their 5-page third way comeback retreat document, the map, the chart. Israel's not mentioned. Gaza's not mentioned. I don't think Ukraine, Russia's mentioned. Healthcare is not mentioned. All that's mentioned is a lot of pablum and gobbledygook and boilerplate about how Democrats need to stand with working class people and they have to abandon small donors. You want to keep supporting that, go ahead, but you're not going to get anything different. Remember what the definition of insanity is where you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you hope that, and you expect something different will happen. Our media, our so-called liberal media, whatever you want to call it, is such a huge part of the problem. It's so responsible for so much that's wrong, for people's lack of understanding, for people's misapprehensions. You know, people thought there was, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. People thought that the Saddam Hussein had tried to get nuclear weapons. And the New York Times was a big part of those lies. Stovepiping directly from Torture Dick's office, the propaganda he wanted you to hear and read. So from the New York Times today, Trump's policies have shaken a once solid economic outlook. Economic forecasts have deteriorated in recent weeks, reflecting the upheaval from federal layoffs, tariff moves, and immigration roundups. So they especially hate tariffs. They really do. The Wall Street class hates tariffs. And they're going to do everything they can to get you to hate tariffs too. Because tariffs are kind of like a minimum wage law that they can't avoid. You can't move, you know, if there's a minimum wage hike in New York State, and you don't want to pay those greedy workers $18 an hour, well, you can move your operation, assuming it's not, you know, totally New York centered. You can move your operation, you make gloves, you can move it to Kentucky, where there's no, you know, where the minimum wage is $7.75 or $7.25 an hour. Or you could move it to Mexico, or you can move it to Haiti. But tariffs make it impossible if they're done right, because the tariff you have to pay when you bring those gloves into the United States. So you want to take advantage, you want to exploit $1 an hour labor south of the border or Trans-Pacific, that's fine. Pay them $1 an hour, pay them whatever you can, destroy their lives, make them work, you know, 13, 14, 15 hours a day for bupkis. But when you bring those gloves into the United States, you got to pay that tariff on every single glove. You who bring them into the country have to pay the tariff. So Wall Street hates tariffs. Labor exploiters have always loved tariffs. I'm sorry, excuse me. See, I like to think I'm smart, but then I say something incredibly stupid. Labor exploiters have always hated tariffs. The enslavers hated tariffs at a huge advantage over every other cotton grower, every other rice grower, every other tobacco grower around the world was at a disadvantage compared to Southern planters because the Southern planters didn't pay their workers any wages. They paid them the absolute bare minimum they could get away with while keeping them alive to do incredibly difficult, dangerous, painful work. So the enslavers hated tariffs because they didn't want any country putting a tariff on the rice that they were selling, on the tobacco, on the cotton. Right? You could grow really good cotton in Egypt. Egyptian long staple cotton is the best cotton in the world. So the way you compete against those not very well-paid Egyptians is by not paying your workers anything at all. So the enslavers hated tariffs. They were totally against them. And that's the same for Wall Street today. And that's the same for the New York Times. So they want you to believe, oh, the economy was going so well until Trump's tariffs. Well, I don't think it was going so well. Here's NPR just 2-3 months ago? This is the economy, right? This is while Biden's still president, Harris is still VP. This is that super healthy, strong economy that is only now under duress because Trump's going to impose tariffs and did levy a few. I don't know. I don't think an economy with record levels of homeless people is doing so well. I don't think that necessarily is working for all of us. I think that's a disastrous economy. I think that's a bad economy. I don't think that's an economy that, despite what the New York Times says, is firing on all cylinders. Tariffs will cause some problems. There's no question. They will have implications. They do cause price hikes, right? If you have to pay workers more, then the cost of manufacturing goes up. Now, there's other factors, because you can have a situation where wages go up, but so does employment, and prices don't. That's when you have a true oligopoly. When prices are set not by the market, not by supply and demand curves which approximate relatively perfect competition, but instead where one or two big players dominate the market and set above market prices, then tariffs aren't necessarily going to lead to higher prices, nor will they lead to reduced unemployment or increased unemployment. I don't know that that's going to be the case here, but it's just something to bear in mind, that because our economy is so distorted by the paucity of real competition, of meaningful, because there's so many barriers to entry, it's so hard to challenge the behemoths, the Amazons, the Walmarts that set prices. It's so hard to challenge them that tariffs and higher minimum wages may not even lead to higher prices, or only slightly. Apple doesn't sell its computers at a super low price because it has low wage workers in China that it exploits. Apple computers still cost a ton. Apple makes enormous profits because it pays laborers low prices in China and low wages in China, and charges very high prices in the United States for its product. It would still make a profit if it has to pay tariffs on the computers it imports. So it's far from clear that higher prices will result from more tariffs. And we see those super expensive egg prices, but we don't import eggs. Those eggs are American. It's not because nobody's paying more for eggs because of tariffs. We're paying more for eggs because there's a shortage of eggs, because the hens are all dying from the flu. We pay more for computers not because there's a computer shortage, but because there's a few manufacturers, not a whole bunch, just a few for the entire world, and they keep supplies relatively low and they price very high. And it's not because they pay their workers too much. The price is still too high for computers. Now, I thought the idea of tariffs, and I made the argument, Trump's tariffs are just sort of like this shotgun. He's shooting, everything, anything that moves, he's going to shoot at. Why does he want to put tariffs on Canada, a high wage country? We should put tariffs on low wage countries. Mexico's medium wage, but low wage like Haiti, like Vietnam. And I stand by that. But I was surprised to read this. We actually do run a pretty significant trade deficit with Canada, which does support the call for tariffs on Canadian goods. But of course, MSNBC, low rent, low rate network, totally misapprehends this. And here's Lawrence O'Donnell, who, he's smart. He knows he's full of crap. He really does. It's just he doesn't care. He knows he's just totally BSing you when he talks about who's paying for tariffs. He knows it's a load, but he doesn't, again, he doesn't care because he knows he's getting millions to lie to you. He's getting millions. This guy is getting millions to lie to you. And supposedly on the liberal network, that's carrying water for corporate elites who like to be able to offshore jobs and pay workers overseas a pittance and pay no price at home for that. Here's O'Donnell.
Nothing. Wall Street has been listening to Donald Trump very carefully for years, and they've never once heard Donald Trump accurately describe what a tariff is. The truth of tariffs.
Well, they don't need. See, he's already getting. First of all, O'Donnell's like aligning with Wall Street, which is fine. That's who MSNBC is. It's a Wall Street network. But Wall Street doesn't need Trump to explain to them tariffs. They understand tariffs. We all understand tariffs. You pay to bring goods made overseas into this country. You want to sell something that's made in another country, if there's tariffs on that good or tariffs on that country, you pay to bring it into the country. It's not hard to understand. Everybody understands them.
Forced Donald Trump to back down today.
Oh, it's Canada forced.
Wall Street knows that Donald Trump.
Now, apparently there were a few tariffs that weren't imposed. I don't know how this went down. A few weren't imposed. I didn't explore it very carefully, except to know that Lawrence O'Donnell is lying to you and doesn't understand what's really going on, or is deliberately misrepresenting to you what the tariffs do.
Every time he talks about tariffs, everyone on Wall Street knows that no foreign country has ever paid an American tariff and never will. Wall Street knows the only people who pay Trump tariffs are people in the United States who pay for imported goods. Like, say...
Well, that's true. If you buy an import, then there may be a surcharge that results from that tariff. The price of that good that you purchase, you buy a computer that's made in China, assembled in China, the price may or may not go up if a tariff is imposed. Now, it may not. But the consumer doesn't pay the tariff. The importer pays the tariff. It's a very important distinction because the importer pays the tariff, but the price is set in the store, in the outlet, on the website, by the e-commerce. And there's not a separate line. Now, they may put it on there to be obnoxious about it and say tariff, but really, they determine what they sell it for. And if there's a lot of competition, and if there is, as a result of the tariff, more American manufacturing, then the price ain't going to go up very much. But the tariff that's paid by the importer will go to the U.S. Treasury, which is a good thing, which benefits our country.
Coffee. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who has tasted the very small batch and very expensive coffee grown in Hawaii, not one drop of coffee you have swallowed in your life came from an American coffee bean.
Now, that's true? Yes, we don't grow coffee in this country, except in Hawaii. And not all coffee is subject to tariffs. Some is, some isn't. I guess it depends where it's grown, which country, who's importing it. So O'Donnell's the point. And the point is that you shouldn't impose tariffs on every single good that's brought into this country. You have to be smart about it. You have to say, well, are the workers who made this coffee, are they being exploited? Maybe there's two countries we trade with that both sell us coffee. And one of those countries treats the workers relatively well who grow the coffee, and they get relatively decent conditions, and they are able to survive. And maybe they're mostly small farms that grow the beans. And we might say, okay, well, that country, I don't know, call it Bolivia. I believe they grow coffee in Bolivia. We're not going to impose tariffs because their coffee laborers get paid a decent wage and they have a decent life. So we're not going to have a coffee bean tariff for Colombia. But then we're going to look at another country where, like, let's call it Colombia, where they've got a military junta, or Guatemala or Honduras, where there's a military regime where the soldiers, break up strikes by coffee workers and bust heads if laborers demand better conditions. Well, we are going to impose tariffs on that coffee. So that's the way you have smart tariff policy. That's what we should be doing. That's what a savvy, responsible media would be telling you. Explaining what tariffs do and don't do, where they can have positive impact, where they can have negative impact. Let me just play one more clip because we've been going for an hour and I'm looking forward to start the weekend. But you just cannot expect responsible political conversation, even from this guy, kind of one of my heroes once upon a time. And he's responding to Trump. And he has made, now I'm not going to play where he goes after Trump for trying to broker peace, right? Trying to end the proxy war with Russia. Bernie should be for that. But of course he goes after Trump. But here's Bernie talking a little bit, just briefly mentions tariffs.
Policies. According to a recent study by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, if all of Trump's so-called America First policies are enacted, including his tariffs, which he spoke a lot about tonight, the bottom 95% of Americans will see their taxes go up, while the richest 5% in our country will see their taxes go down.
Right. So what Bernie's doing there is he's equating tariffs with taxes, right? Taxes will mean Americans have to pay more. Their working class people will have higher taxes. But again, tariffs aren't taxes. There's some similarities, but they're not taxes. You don't have to pay them if you don't buy the particular good. And in fact, the tariff itself is paid by the importer, not by the purchaser. So they're not even a true sales tax, where the tax for a sales tax is imposed at the cash register. But all that said, there's legitimate points that Bernie's making. Yes, Trump is a billionaire president, and he's for the billionaire class mostly. And he's certainly for, although, again, a lot of billionaires don't like tariffs. Bezos won't like tariffs because it will mean he the goods he sells at Amazon, he can't sell for quite as cheap as he was hoping to, or his profit margins will decline slightly. But Bernie is, again, misrepresenting what tariffs do there, and he's going after Trump, whereas for a smart policy, which is tariffs, whereas what he could be doing is saying, yeah, Trump wants to lower tax, he's calling for tax cuts for the billionaires. That's a terrible, terrible thing. It's a terrible policy, and it is. It's awful. But rather than focus on top marginal income tax rates and corporate, taxes, which I'm sort of mixed on corporate taxes. There are pluses and minuses to corporate. But instead of focusing basically on top marginal income and estate tax rates, which should be so much higher, and making that case and saying, hey, Trump's got some good ideas. Tariffs make sense in a lot of cases. I support tariffs. Instead of saying that, Bernie is just carrying water for a party which he doesn't belong to, of which he has been very, very critical. It's so, so sad. It's impossible for us to solve our problems because we've fallen into this world. We're in this world where it's just you're either team red or team blue. And I could argue it's psychology, but it's psychology that serves a real function. Its function is to keep us from uniting against the billionaire elites, to keep us from uniting against the corporate power. So there, Bernie, 2019, of course I would use tariffs as president. Singing a very, very different tune when he responds to Trump, isn't he? All right, that's going to do it for today. That's going to do it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the free-for-all. I always enjoy doing these shows. But I'll enjoy it more when the audience grows, and that means you need to share this with friends, with colleagues, with anyone you think might be interested. And let me know what you think. Click like, click subscribe. I would so appreciate it. You have a great afternoon and a great weekend.